The challenge begins. For 3,000 years, Earth had been quiet. It wasn't the silence of fear, but the calm of a world that had grown wise. Wars were no longer fought between nations. Poverty and hunger were gone. Humanity had spread across the stars, not to conquer, but to learn. Cities floated in space, glowing like jewels in the vast darkness. Ships traveled between planets with ease. People from Earth, Mars, and colonies beyond called themselves one thing: human. It was a name they were proud of. A name that for centuries no one dared challenge. And then they came. The first sign was a shadow. Far beyond Neptune, telescopes picked up something massive. At first, scientists thought it was an asteroid, but as it grew closer, its shape became clear. It wasn't a rock. It was a fleet, an armada of alien ships, large enough to blot out the stars. The ships were black, sharp, and cold, as if they had been carved from nightmares. They moved in perfect lines, silent and unstoppable. And they were heading straight for Earth. When the aliens finally spoke, their message echoed across every screen, every communicator, and every ship in human space. We are the Ultheri. We have conquered 1,000 worlds. Your planet is next. Surrender or be destroyed. The message was delivered in perfect English, though it came with no explanation of how the aliens knew humanity's language. It was cold, calculated. The Ultheri didn't ask for negotiations. They didn't ask for peace. They offered only submission or death. And yet, Earth did not panic. The human leaders gathered in Unity Hall, a great chamber that floated above Earth. Screens showed live feeds of the Ultheri fleet, a dark wave approaching like an unstoppable storm. Around the room sat presidents, scientists, generals, and thinkers from every corner of human space. They looked at the enemy and listened to the challenge. For a moment, there was silence. Then someone laughed. It was General Adam Reese, an old man with sharp eyes and a voice like gravel. "Did they say surrender?" he asked, grinning. "Are they serious?" Some of the others looked at him, confused. The Ultheri message was no joke. The fleet was massive, armed with weapons no one could yet understand. But Reese wasn't the only one who smiled. Slowly, nods and grins spread across the room. "You're not worried?" someone finally asked. Reese leaned back in his chair. "Let me tell you something about humans," he said. "We don't surrender. Not to aliens. Not to anyone." The room fell quiet again, but this time, it wasn't from fear. It was the quiet of people who knew what they had to do. The Ultheri had seen other civilizations surrender without a fight. Planets had bowed to their power, giving up their freedom to save their lives. But the Ultheri had never faced humans. They had never faced a species that knew what it meant to struggle, to fall, and to rise again. For 3,000 years, humanity had lived in peace, but that peace had not come easily. Before it, humans had fought wars against themselves. They had fought hunger, disease, and the harshness of nature. They had fought against the very limits of their existence. And because of that, they were ready. The Ultheri did not know this. On their flagship, a massive ship shaped like a black spear, Commander Rallic stood before his crew. The Ultheri were a proud species, tall, armored, and powerful. Their war machines had torn down the defenses of countless worlds. They had crushed empires, broken heroes, and silenced rebellion wherever they found it. Earth, they believed, would be no different. "Humans are weak," Rallic said to his officers. His voice echoed in the great chamber, deep and full of confidence. "They have forgotten how to fight. Peace has made them soft." His officers nodded in agreement. The Ultheri had studied humans from afar. Their broadcasts showed people laughing, celebrating, building art, and exploring space. To Rallic, it looked like weakness. "Send another message," Rallic ordered. "Tell them they have one day to surrender. After that, we will destroy their world." On Earth, the message was received. The human leaders gathered again, this time in a smaller room with fewer words spoken. Outside, the stars were filled with the approaching fleet. Thousands of black ships, their weapons glowing faintly like dying embers. President Elena Moore of Earth looked at her generals. "How long until they arrive?" she asked. 24 hours, someone replied. Moore nodded. "Are we ready?" General Reese grinned. "We've been ready for centuries." She turned to face the others. "The Ultheri think peace has made us weak. They don't know that peace made us strong." The leaders nodded. Orders were given. Messages were sent. Across Earth and its colonies, humans prepared. Ships were fueled. Defenses activated, and weapons, hidden for millennia, were brought online. And still, no one panicked. Instead, there was a feeling of quiet excitement. The Ultheri had no idea what was coming. As the Ultheri fleet approached Earth, Rallick stared out of his ship's massive window. He saw the blue planet below, shining like a gem. He saw no defenses, no armies, no signs of fear. To him, it looked like victory. "Prepare the weapons," Rallick ordered. But far below, on that shining blue planet, humanity smiled. Because the Ultheri weren't ready for what Earth was about to show them. The challenge had begun. The Ultheri underestimate us. Hook. The Ultheri fleet blocked the stars. Thousands of black ships hovered above Earth, ready to strike. The humans, they simply watched and smiled. The Ultheri fleet arrived exactly 24 hours later, as promised. The sky above Earth turned dark as thousands of their warships formed a shadowy curtain. It was an awe-inspiring sight. Cities on the surface dimmed their lights, and people gathered in open fields and rooftops to stare upward. Children pointed. Parents whispered. Yet no one ran, no one hid. Commander Rallick stood on the bridge of the Ultheri flagship, staring down at the planet that refused to cower. He didn't understand what he was seeing. Where were the defense shields? The missile barrages? The desperate attempts to communicate for mercy? Instead, there were broadcasts. The humans had activated their global communication networks. On every screen and every channel, Earth was showing its cities. Vast, bright, and filled with life. Music played, soft and beautiful. Children laughed. People hugged their families. There was no sign of fear. Rallick turned to his second-in-command, a warrior named Savar. "What is this?" he growled. "A trick." Savar blinked, his glowing yellow eyes confused. "It appears they are not afraid, Commander." "Then they are fools," Rallick spat. He slammed his armored fist on the control panel, sending sparks flying. "Send them one final message. We will not wait." On Earth, President Elena Moore watched the broadcast from her command center. She stood tall, hands behind her back, as the final message from the Ultheri arrived. "Humans, you have failed to submit. In moments, we will unleash our weapons. Your world will burn. Your people will fall. Resist, and your suffering will only grow." The room fell silent as the alien voice faded. President Moore glanced at her generals, her expression calm. "They're really doing this," someone muttered. General Adam Reese, ever the unshakable one, grinned. "Let them. They're about to learn what happens when you wake a sleeping giant." Moore nodded. "Broadcast my message to them. Make sure they see it." Seconds later, every Ultheri ship's screen flickered. Commander Rallick's flagship shook slightly as Earth's message cut through their systems, overpowering even their own communications. The human president's face appeared on every screen. She was calm and composed, her eyes steady. Behind her was the image of Earth, shining brilliantly against the black of space. "Ultheri," she said, her voice smooth and clear, "you've misjudged us. For 3,000 years, we have known peace, not because we are weak, but because we chose to be strong. You see us as prey. You think you've won." She leaned forward, and for the first time, her smile turned razor-sharp. "But here's the truth. You're not the hunters in this story. You're the prey." With that, the broadcast ended. Rallick's hands tightened into fists. He turned to his officers, his voice shaking with anger. Enough of these games. Fire. Across the fleet, weapons lit up. Ultheri warships unleashed their first attack. Enormous energy blasts, powerful enough to turn mountains to dust, shot toward Earth. The world below should have been helpless. Relic expected cities to shatter, oceans to boil, and fire to consume the planet. But none of that happened. Instead, the energy blast struck something invisible, something that wasn't supposed to exist. Above Earth, the air shimmered as a massive energy shield lit up, spreading across the planet like a translucent dome. The Ultheri weapons exploded harmlessly against it, their power absorbed and diffused like smoke in the wind. On the Ultheri flagship, alarms blared. Officers shouted in confusion as Relic stared in disbelief. "What is this?" he roared. "They have shields." Suvar's voice trembled as he analyzed the readings. "This technology, it's beyond anything we've seen, Commander. It's ancient, but advanced. How is this possible?" Relic couldn't respond. His mind refused to accept what was happening. For centuries, the Ultheri had crushed every civilization they encountered. They had faced planets with shields before, but never like this. This shield wasn't a last-minute defense. It had been waiting. Humanity had been waiting. "Continue firing," Relic shouted. "Break through their defenses." More energy blasts followed, thousands of them raining down in a coordinated assault. The shield shimmered, cracked, and then held. It was impenetrable. Back on Earth, cheers erupted across cities as people watched the Ultheri weapons fail. Children clapped, adults laughed, and soldiers prepared for the next step. In Unity Hall, General Reese turned to President Moore, still grinning. "The shield worked as expected, ma'am. They didn't see it coming." Moore nodded. "How could they? We've had centuries to prepare. They think they're the storm, but we're the mountain." She gestured to the holographic display in front of them. It showed the Ultheri fleet hovering uselessly above Earth, their weapons failing. But humanity's ships, sleek, silent, and deadly, were now rising from hidden bases all over the planet. "They wanted a war," Moore said softly. "We'll give them one." On the flagship, Relic's rage was turning to panic. "Commander," an officer shouted, "human ships are launching. Hundreds of them." Relic turned to the window and froze. From the surface of Earth, ships began to rise. They weren't clunky or slow like the fleets of other species the Ultheri had conquered. These ships were smooth, silent, and fast. They moved like arrows cutting through the air, sleek and purposeful. More alarms rang. "They're locking weapons on us, Commander." Relic felt a chill crawl through his armor as he whispered, "Impossible." Humanity had spent 3,000 years in peace, but in that peace, they had built more than just cities and art. They had built weapons the Ultheri could not have dreamed of. And now, they were ready to use them. The humans had smiled. And now, they were about to show the Ultheri why. Humanity's secret weapon. Hook. The Ultheri watched as human ships rose from Earth like sparks flying into the sky. They thought we were unarmed. They thought we were weak. But they had forgotten one truth. Humans never show their full hand until the game is over. On board the Ultheri flagship, the bridge had turned into chaos. Officers shouted, screens flashed red, and alarms blared throughout the great ship. Commander Relic stood in the center, his fists trembling as he stared at the impossible sight outside. Human ships, hundreds of them, rose from Earth's surface in perfect formation. They gleamed silver against the darkness of space, cutting through the void with a grace and speed that Ultheri warships could not match. Suvar, Relic's second-in-command, stared at the tactical display in disbelief. "Commander, these ships, their energy readings are off the charts. How did they build this fleet without us knowing?" Relic didn't answer. He couldn't. The humans had hidden their strength, and now it was rising before his eyes like a monster from a nightmare. The human ships were small, smaller than Ultheri warships, but they were fast, agile, and equipped with weapons that the Ultheri couldn't yet identify. They moved with precision, like dancers in the blackness of space, each ship taking position as if following an invisible orchestra conductor. Rallic growled, "It doesn't matter what toys they've built. Focus fire. I want them destroyed." The Ultheri fleet responded with fury. Thousands of weapons activated in unison, firing blazing energy bolts that tore through the void. The blackness of space turned white with fire. But the human ships moved like smoke, slipping through the attacks with impossible ease. Where Ultheri ships were brutal and heavy, human ships were fast, intelligent, and evasive. On Earth, in the Unity Hall, President Elena Moore and General Adam Reese watched the battle unfold on massive holographic screens. Ships lit up like stars, spinning and dodging as Ultheri weapons passed harmlessly through empty space. "See that?" Reese said, pointing to the display. "They're firing in straight lines. They're not adapting." Moore nodded, her eyes sharp. "The Ultheri fight like conquerors. They expect us to stand still." "Too bad for them," Reese said with a grin. "Humans don't stand still." The first Ultheri warship exploded only minutes into the battle. It was a massive ship, twice the size of a city, armed with hundreds of cannons. But one human ship, a sleek, silvery dart, dove beneath it, weaving through fire, and launched a single shot. The shot struck the Ultheri ship's core. From a distance, it looked like the ship simply paused. Then a bright light consumed it, and the mighty warship shattered into a silent fireball. On the Ultheri flagship, Rallic stared at the screens, his voice barely a whisper. "How?" Human ships were attacking with pinpoint accuracy, hitting weaknesses the Ultheri didn't even know they had. "It's as if they can see through us," Suvar said, his voice trembling. "They know where to strike." Rallic's rage boiled over. "It's not possible. These primitives—" "They're not primitives," Suvar interrupted, his voice rising. "They're prepared." Deep within one of the human ships, Captain Mira Lawson smiled as she watched her target burn. Her ship, the Valkyrie, was small and nimble, equipped with something no Ultheri could comprehend: human ingenuity. "Report," Mira said, turning to her crew. Her weapons officer grinned. "Direct hit. Their shields didn't stand a chance." "Of course they didn't," Mira said. She tapped the control panel in front of her, bringing up the display of the Ultheri fleet. "They think brute force wins wars. Let's teach them what strategy looks like." Across the human fleet, captains like Mira followed the same plan. They darted in and out of the Ultheri formations, targeting critical systems, shield generators, weapon cores, engines. One by one, Ultheri ships began to falter. It wasn't just human technology that was winning the fight. It was human creativity, human adaptability, human thought. Commander Rallic was now pacing. His fleet, the pride of the Ultheri Empire, was crumbling before his eyes. He had underestimated the humans. "We need to retreat, Commander," Suvar said, panic creeping into his voice. Rallic whipped around. "Retreat? From these insects?" "No." But the numbers were undeniable. Of the thousands of Ultheri warships, dozens had already been destroyed, and hundreds more were damaged. The humans were like wolves, hunting the weaknesses of the Ultheri ships with terrifying efficiency. Suddenly, the main screen in Rallic's flagship flickered. The human president appeared again, her calm face staring back at him. "Commander Rallic," President Moore said, her voice even. "This battle is over. You have two choices: retreat or face the full power of humanity." Rallic snarled. "You dare?" Moore's eyes narrowed, and her tone turned sharp. "We are not the soft, frightened species you believed us to be. We've spent centuries preparing for a day like this. You walked into our skies thinking you were invincible. Now you will leave knowing we are your greatest mistake." The message ended. Silence filled the Ultheri bridge. On Earth, people watched as the Ultheri fleet began to fall apart. Ships burned and scattered. Some turned and fled back toward deep space. Humanity had won the first battle. In Unity Hall, General Reese let out a laugh. They came here thinking we'd beg. Instead, they ran. President Moore smiled faintly, but her eyes remained focused on the holographic map. They'll be back. And next time, they won't underestimate us. Reese nodded, his grin fading. Let them come. We'll be ready. As the last of the Ultheri ships retreated beyond Earth's orbit, the humans didn't cheer. They didn't celebrate. Instead, they stood together and watched the skies. The Ultheri had seen humanity's ships, their shields, and their weapons. But what they hadn't yet seen, what no one in the galaxy had yet seen, was the true extent of humanity's power. And that was humanity's greatest weapon of all. They smiled because the war had only just begun. The history of humanity's strength. Look. Commander Rallick sat in silence, staring at the star chart where Earth now glowed like a warning beacon. How? He whispered. How had humanity defeated the Ultheri so easily? The answer was simple. They had survived worse than him. The Ultheri fleet limped back into deep space, battered and broken. Commander Rallick sat on his war throne, his armor dented, his pride shattered. Reports flooded in. Nearly a third of his mighty fleet was destroyed. Another third irreparably damaged. And Earth, untouched. The humans hadn't just defended themselves. They had humiliated him. Commander, Suvar said hesitantly, approaching with a tablet in his clawed hand, we are receiving intercepted human transmissions. They are unusual. Rallick's burning eyes narrowed. Unusual. Testavar nodded and activated the main screen. The humans had not tried to hide these messages. They'd broadcasted them laudably into the stars as if daring the Ultheri to listen. On screen, images appeared. Humans, fighting wars, building cities, facing impossible challenges. They were battles not fought in space, but on their own soil, in their own past. Rallick stared, confused. What is this? What are they showing us? Suvar's voice trembled. Their history. Earth, 2,000 years earlier. War. It was the story of humanity. A species born on a fragile blue planet, surrounded by hunger, disease, and conflict. From the moment humans first walked upright, they fought, not just each other, but the very world they lived on. They fought the cold of winter and the fire of summer. They fought the beasts of the forests, deserts, and seas. They fought plagues that spread like shadows and droughts that turned the land to dust. And when they fought themselves, their wars were brutal, their losses unimaginable. Cities fell. Millions died. Entire generations were wiped out. But no matter how broken they became, they never stopped rebuilding. For humans, war wasn't a tool of conquest like it was for the Ultheri. It was something they survived. They learned from it, adapted because of it. Each time humanity fell, they rose stronger than before. Each time they were struck down, they stood back up with more resilience. Commander Rallick watched as the images flashed across the screen. A soldier in tattered clothes, carrying his wounded comrade through fire. A family in a bombed city, sharing their last piece of bread. A scientist alone in a dim lab, discovering the cure to save a dying world. A pilot breaking through impossible odds to bring hope where there was none. Humans didn't just fight wars. They overcame them. And when the wars ended, they'd rebuild, not for revenge, but for peace. Rallick's voice was tight as he muttered, "Why are they showing us this?" Suvar's claws tapped nervously. I believe they want us to understand. This is why they are not afraid of us." Rallick turned sharply. Not afraid. They should be afraid. But deep down, he knew they weren't. Earth, Unity Hall. President Alina Moore stood before a live camera, her message broadcast to every human colony and every listening Ultheri ship. She spoke not to gloat but to remind humanity of who they were. For thousands of years, we were at war with ourselves, Moore said, her voice calm and steady. We fought. We fell. and we suffered. But we endured. Our greatest weapon has never been our ships or our shields. It is our will to survive, to adapt, to become better. Behind her, images of humanity's history played. Images of the same wars Rallick was watching. Moore's eyes narrowed. The Ultheri think we are soft because we found peace, but our peace wasn't given to us. We earned it. It was forged in blood, sacrifice, and struggle, and we have not forgotten how to fight. Her message was clear. You cannot break us, because we were forged to be unbreakable. On the Ultheri flagship, silence filled the room. The officers had stopped shouting orders. The crew had stopped tracking human ships. All of them now stared at the screen, watching this strange and terrifying species explain itself. Rallick's voice broke the silence. Their peace was earned. HFY nodded slowly. They are unlike anyone we've conquered, Commander. They are something else. Rallick slammed his fist into the armrest of his chair. They are still humans. We will adapt. We will return. HFY hesitated before answering. But will we survive? Rallick froze at the question. Earth's orbit. The human fleet did not pursue the retreating Ultheri. Instead, they simply watched as the alien ships disappeared into deep space. Humanity's leaders knew this was not over. The Ultheri would return, stronger, angrier, and more determined. But so would humanity. In Unity Hall, General Adam Reese looked at the holographic map of the stars. He turned to President Moore and said, "They'll come back, and they'll bring more ships next time." Moore nodded. "Then we'll show them what happens when you try to conquer the unconquerable." Reese grinned. "They're starting to realize it, aren't they?" "Realize what?" Moore asked. "That we've been preparing for this moment for centuries. We stopped fighting each other so we could face something bigger." Reese leaned back in his chair, eyes gleaming. "We didn't stop being warriors. We just started waiting for the right fight." Deep space. Commander Rallick sat alone in his chambers, staring at the holographic image of Earth, a small blue planet that had defeated him. He had thought humanity would crumble like all the others. But now he understood. Humans were not weak because of their peace. They were strong because of it. Rallick whispered to himself, "What kind of species survives thousands of wars, only to become stronger?" No answer came. The Ultheri had seen the human ships and shields, but now they had seen their history, the truth of what humanity was, and for the first time, Rallick felt something new creeping into his heart. Fear, because humanity had been preparing for a war like this for thousands of years, and the Ultheri had just given them a reason to fight. Humanity fights back. Hook. The Ultheri returned with vengeance in their hearts and fire in their cannons. This time, they brought everything. But Earth had waited for this moment. The hunters had become the hunted, and humanity smiled once more. The Ultheri fleet returned. It took weeks for their forces to regroup, but they came back with a fury unlike before. The blackness of space trembled as tens of thousands of warships emerged from the void, blotting out the light of distant stars. This was no longer an invasion. It was a reckoning. Commander Rallick stood on the bridge of his new flagship, twice as large, 10 times as deadly as the last. His armor gleamed, his eyes burned with a need to redeem his name and empire. He gazed upon Earth, that defiant blue gem, as his fleet surrounded it from every angle. "Humans," he growled into the comms, broadcasting his message across every channel. "You have humiliated us once, but now you will be crushed. There will be no mercy. This time, we bring the full force of the Ultheri Empire." He expected fear, pleas, begging. Instead, humanity responded with a simple, confident message. "We've been waiting for you." Earth's defense grid. From the human colonies on Mars and Luna to the underground bunkers on Earth, every station hummed to life. A quiet tension spread across humanity, but it wasn't fear. It was anticipation. This was the moment they had prepared for. President Elena Moore stood with General Adam Reese in the command center of Unity Hall. Holographic maps display the Ulthuri fleet surrounding the planet, a storm of ships ready to descend upon Earth. 30,000 warships, a technician reported. Reese let out a low whistle. They'd brought the whole empire this time. I'm flattered. Moore's gaze remained steady. And we'll show them that numbers don't win wars. Strategy does. Reese grinned. And humanity. The counterattack begins. The Ulthuri moved first. Thousands of black warships descended toward Earth in perfect formation, their weapons lighting up the void with streaks of fire. It was a display of overwhelming force, a wall of destruction that no species had ever survived. But humanity was not like other species. From hidden bases deep within Earth's crust, human ships launched. From under the icy oceans, submarine carriers surfaced, releasing squadrons of fighters. From lunar outposts, orbital cannons opened fire, sending blinding beams of energy across space. It was humanity's turn to strike. The Ulthuri formations were tight, calculated, and predictable. Human ships darted through their ranks like angry wasps, cutting apart their ships with precision strikes. Human pilots weaved through Ulthuri fire like they had trained for it their entire lives. Because they had. And then the surprises began. Surprise number 1. Earth's hidden arsenal. The Ulthuri thought they had mapped Earth's defenses, but as they pushed closer to the planet, mountains split open and plains gave way. Massive artillery batteries rose from hidden silos, their barrels glowing red-hot as they fired beams of energy straight into the Ulthuri ranks. On the far side of the moon, massive satellite networks turned and fired coordinated particle beams that tore through ships like paper. Human technology, sleek and efficient, overwhelmed the Ulthuri fleet at every turn. They have planetary weapons, one Ulthuri officer shouted on the flagship. Relic's jaw tightened. Impossible. They've hidden all of this. Not hidden, Savar murmured grimly. Prepared. Surprise number 2. Human tactics. The Ulthuri had always fought like conquerors, using overwhelming force to crush resistance. But humanity's tactics were something else entirely. Human ships didn't fight fair. They used misdirection, decoys, and traps. Fighter squadrons split apart, only to reform behind Ulthuri ships. Human command ships tricked Ulthuri sensors with ghost signals, leading them into ambushes where artillery batteries waited silently. In one instance, an Ulthuri dreadnought chased a human frigate straight into Earth's atmosphere, only for the frigate to pull a tight maneuver and escape as the dreadnought disintegrated in the heat. On board the Ulthuri flagship, chaos reigned. Commander, an officer screamed, we're losing ships faster than we can track. Relic's eyes burned as he watched human ships outmaneuver his once proud fleet. How are they doing this? Savar turned to him, desperation in his voice. They fight like no one we've ever faced. They fight to win. Surprise number 3. Humanity's unseen weapon. Just when the Ulthuri thought they had seen it all, the human fleet activated its final surprise. A dozen massive ships emerged from deep space, ships that dwarfed even the largest Ulthuri warships. They were not built for beauty or intimidation. They were built for one purpose: ending wars. Each ship activated a technology the Ulthuri had never seen before: graviton fields, EMP bursts, and weapon systems that bent space itself. They tore through Ulthuri ships in silence, leaving only debris where dreadnoughts had once hovered. The Ulthuri had fought empires before, but this wasn't an empire. It was humanity, and humanity had brought its full weight to bear. The turning point. On Earth, President Moore watched as the Ulthuri fleet faltered. They're breaking, a technician reported. Moore's voice was steady. Send them a message. Across the Ulthuri fleet, every screen flickered, and the face of President Moore appeared. She looked calm, almost sorrowful. Commander Relic, she said, this war is over. Retreat now, or we will ensure your empire never threatens another world again. On the flagship, Relic stared at the screen, his pride warring with the reality in front of him. Half his fleet was gone, and the other half was falling apart. His officers looked to him, waiting for orders. For the first time in his life, Rallic lowered his head, ordered the retreat. Victory. The Ultheri ships turned and fled, their once mighty fleet reduced to ashes. Humanity did not chase them. They did not need to. Earth had won. In Unity Hall, cheers erupted as the final Ultheri ships vanished into deep space. General Reese turned to President Moore, his grin wide. "I think they learned their lesson." Moore nodded, her gaze still on the stars. "They'll be back. But next time, they'll know the truth." "What truth?" Reese asked. "That humanity is not to be conquered." In the silence, as the skies cleared and the fires of war faded, Earth stood victorious. Across the colonies and planets, humans looked to the stars, not with fear, but with confidence. They were no longer prey. They were no longer just survivors. They were humanity, unbreakable, unstoppable, and ready for whatever came next. Humanity's greatest gamble. Hook. The Ultheri had retreated, but the stars whispered of their return. They wouldn't make the same mistakes again. Humanity knew this, and so they made a choice, a gamble, one that would change the fate of the galaxy forever. Deep space, Ultheri Prime. The Ultheri homeworld was a fortress. Massive shipyards orbited its skies, constructing warships faster than any species could imagine. Cities sprawled across the planet's surface, surrounded by defenses that had stood for thousands of years. Commander Rallic stood before the Ultheri Council, his pride reduced to ashes, but his resolve unshaken. The war had scared him, but it had not broken him. "They humiliated us," one elder hissed, their voice echoing through the marble chamber. "A primitive species defeated the might of the Ultheri Empire." "They are not primitive," Rallic growled. His voice was steel. "They are dangerous." The council erupted in snarls of outrage, but Rallic raised a clawed hand. "Let me finish. They won because we underestimated them. They fought with strategies we have never seen and weapons that defy our understanding. If we attack again without a plan, we will lose." The council fell silent. "What do you propose?" one elder asked. Rallic's eyes narrowed. "We learn. We adapt. And when we return, we erase humanity from existence." The Ultheri Empire began preparing for war, a war to end humanity once and for all. They would bring every ship, every weapon, and every soldier they possessed. It would be a final confrontation. But humanity knew they were coming. Earth, Unity Hall. The skies above Earth were calm, but below the surface, humanity's greatest minds were at work. In underground labs, on orbital stations, and aboard hidden space stations, scientists and engineers gathered to do the impossible. General Adam Reese paced the length of the war room, his boots echoing against the polished floor. President Moore stood at the head of the table, surrounded by holograms of galaxies, ship designs, and alien intel. "They're rebuilding," Moore said, looking at the gathered leaders. "This time, they'll bring everything." Reese smirked. "Good. So will we." She turned to the room, her expression grim. "We won the last battle because we were underestimated. That won't happen again. If we want to survive, we need to end this war before it begins." The generals looked at her, startled. "End the war?" one asked. "How?" Moore's eyes gleamed. "We take the fight to them." The room fell silent. Humanity had never gone on the offensive in this war. They had defended. They had outlasted. But now, President Moore was suggesting something bold, something dangerous. Reese crossed his arms, grinning. "A preemptive strike." "Yes," Moore said firmly. "The Ultheri Empire is vast, but their strength lies in their leadership and infrastructure. We won't win by fighting their entire fleet. We need to hit them where it hurts, their homeworld." The plan. The gamble was simple in concept, but impossible in execution. Unless you were human. A small, elite fleet would infiltrate Ultheri Prime, bypassing their defenses with technology the Ultheri had never seen before. Their target, the Ultheri Council itself. It was a plan of immense risk. If the mission failed, humanity would expose its greatest weapons and lose the element of surprise forever. But if it succeeded, the war would end. The strike fleet. From across human space, the best pilots, engineers, and strategists were selected. They were not soldiers. They were warriors. Veterans of battles that had never been recorded, survivors of wars fought in silence. Captain Mira Lawson stood at the helm of her ship, the Valkyrie, as it hovered in orbit. It was humanity's fastest vessel, a marvel of stealth and precision. Around her, a fleet of 50 ships, the smallest fleet ever sent to battle, prepared for departure. General Reese's voice echoed through the comms. "This mission isn't about pride," he said. "It's about survival. The Ultheri think they're invincible because no one's ever brought the fight to them. Today, we show them that humanity doesn't wait to be hunted." Captain Mira smirked and turned to her crew. "You heard the general. Let's go make history." The fleet vanished into the void, engines quiet, shields dark. They became ghosts, moving through the galaxy unseen, toward the heart of the Ultheri Empire. The infiltration. Ultheri Prime. Days later, the human fleet emerged at the edge of Ultheri space. Before them loomed Ultheri Prime, surrounded by fleets of warships and defenses that would make any other species surrender. But not humanity. "Activate cloaks," Mira ordered. The human ships shimmered and disappeared from sight, their stealth technology bending light and heat around them. The Ultheri fleets patrolled the skies, unaware that death was slipping past them like a shadow. Mira's voice cut through the comms. "Everyone, stay sharp. One mistake, and we're dust." The fleet weaved through Ultheri defenses, threading gaps between patrols, slipping beneath sensor grids. Their technology was years, centuries, ahead of the Ultheri. Humanity had built these ships not for show but for survival. They reached the atmosphere of Ultheri Prime, hovering just above the massive capital city where the Ultheri Council gathered. "Targets locked," Mira whispered. The strike. The humans attacked. 50 ships descended on the Ultheri capital with the fury of 1,000 storms. Planetary shields shattered under focused fire. Ultheri warships scrambled to respond, but they were too slow, too predictable. The Valkyrie led the charge, dropping precision strikes on the Council's fortress. Explosions lit up the night sky. Ultheri leaders fled in panic as humanity's assault burned through their defenses. Rallic, watching from his flagship in orbit, froze in horror. "They're here," he whispered. Shivar turned to him, his face pale. "They're not here to fight, Commander. They're here to end us." The Ultheri Council's chambers collapsed into fire and rubble, their leadership shattered. The aftermath. The human fleet pulled away as Ultheri defenses collapsed into chaos. Mira's voice crackled through the comms, steady and triumphant. "Mission accomplished. Let's head home." The Ultheri Prime burned behind them, a message to the entire empire. Earth, Unity Hall. The human fleet returned to cheers across Earth and its colonies. President Moore stood before the cameras, her voice ringing out across the stars. "To the Ultheri Empire, we did not ask for this war. We did not seek it. But if you come for us again, know this: we will end you." Her words traveled farther than humanity knew. Across the galaxy, other empires listened. The Ultheri had been wounded, crippled by a species they had called weak. Humanity's gamble had worked. The war was far from over, but the message had been sent. Never challenge Earth. The Ultheri's defeat, and humanity's message. Hook. The Ultheri had ruled the stars for centuries, unchallenged and feared. But now their empire lay in ruins, shattered by a species they once called weak. Humanity had not just survived, they had changed the fate of the galaxy forever. Ultheri Prime, the ashes of power. The once mighty capital of the Ultheri Empire lay in ruin. Smoke billowed from the shattered towers of the council's fortress. Streets that had once echoed with the triumphant march of conquerors were now silent, save for the faint hum of human drones scanning the rubble. Commander Rallick watched it all unfold from the bridge of his broken flagship. His armor was battered, his voice hoarse, and his pride was gone. "They came here," he muttered to himself, staring at the hologram of his dying planet. "To our home, our heart." Beside him, Shavar said nothing. There was nothing left to say. Humanity had done what no other species had dared. They had fought their way into the core of the Empire and crippled it from within. "The Council is gone, Commander," Shavar whispered. "The Empire is leaderless." Rallick's claws gripped the arm of his chair so tightly the metal cracked. He knew this was more than just a military defeat. This was the end of Ultheri dominance. And Earth had done it. Earth, Unity Hall. On Earth, the celebrations began, but they were not wild or reckless. Humanity knew better than to cheer too loudly at the defeat of an enemy. This was not just their victory. It was a warning to the galaxy. President Elena Moore stood before an audience that stretched across every human colony and beyond. She addressed not just humanity, but any species still listening in the silent, echoing void of space. "This war was not of our choosing," Moore began, her voice steady and clear. "But it was ours to end. We did not fight for conquest. We fought to survive. To remind the galaxy of a simple truth: we are not weak." Behind her, a massive screen displayed the ruins of Ultheri Prime. It was a sobering image, even for humanity. "We are builders, explorers, and dreamers. But when threatened, we are also warriors," Moore continued. "To those who would challenge us, let this be your answer. We will not be conquered. We will not kneel. We are humanity, and we will endure." Her words traveled farther than anyone realized. Across the stars, alien empires, some watching, others hiding in fear, understood that the balance of power had shifted. Earth, that small blue planet at the edge of the galaxy, had risen, and it would not fall. The Ultheri's final stand. Commander Rallick, unwilling to accept defeat, gathered what was left of his fleet. He sent messages across the Empire, rallying every warship, every soldier, and every resource. If this was the end, he would make humanity pay for it. "We attack Earth again," he told his commanders, his voice raw with desperation. "We will burn their cities. We will make them regret this day." But even as he spoke, his officers exchanged glances. They had seen Earth's power, its resilience. They had watched their fleets fall like dust. "Commander," Shavar finally said, stepping forward, "we cannot win. Humanity has already defeated us." Rallick turned sharply, fury blazing in his eyes. "What did you say?" Shavar straightened. "Look around, Commander. Our fleets are scattered. Our leaders are dead. Our homeworld burns. And still, the humans show no fear. They have earned their victory." Rallick's fists trembled, but deep in his heart, he knew Shavar was right. A message across the stars. Days later, a human delegation arrived in orbit above Ultheri Prime. It was not a fleet of conquerors, but a fleet of diplomats. Humanity did not come to destroy what was left of the Ultheri. They came to offer a choice. Captain Mira Lawson, representing Earth, stood aboard the Valkyrie, her face broadcast to every remaining Ultheri leader. "We do not want your extinction," Mira said simply. "We want peace." Rallick, watching the message, snarled at the thought. "Why? Why show us mercy?" Mira's voice was calm. "Because we are not like you. We have learned the cost of war, and we choose something better." The galaxy would remember this moment for centuries. The day humanity chose to rise above vengeance. They had won the war, and yet they reached out with open hands, not clenched fists. It was the ultimate show of strength. The turning of the galaxy. Word of the Ultheri's defeat spread like wildfire. Empires that had once cowered before them now saw a new power rising. Some watched humanity with admiration, others with fear, and a few began to whisper of alliances. On distant worlds, small civilizations who had hidden in the shadows began to hope. If Earth, a single planet, could stand against the Ultheri, perhaps others could too. Humanity had changed the rules of the galaxy. They were no longer just another species. They were something else. A spark. A symbol. Back on Earth. The stars above Earth were quiet once more. Humanity had proven itself, not just to the Ultheri, but to the universe. In Unity Hall, General Reese leaned against a window, staring out at the night sky. President Moore joined him, her hands clasped behind her back. "You think they'll try again?" Reese asked. Moore smiled faintly. "Probably, but they'll think twice next time." Reese chuckled. "Good. Gives us time to get even stronger." Moore looked out at the stars, her eyes thoughtful. "We're not just defending Earth anymore, Adam. We've made a promise to the galaxy. That strength can be used for peace, not just war." "And what happens if someone forgets that promise?" Reese asked. Moore's smile turned sharp. "Then we remind them." The final message. Across Earth's colonies, humanity looked to the stars. They had fought. They had won. And now, they had claimed their place in the galaxy, not as conquerors, but as guardians. Their message, broadcast in every language, echoed across space. "To any who seek war, know this. We are humanity. We will not start the fight. But if you bring it to our door, we will end it." The stars were silent, but they were listening.